Hi class. I wanted to start off this week by giving you a brief tutorial of Resharper and kind of trying to explain to you why I asked you to install this in week one. This semester, we're going to be going into some of the more advanced concepts in C Sharp, and some of those can get a bit tricky. And there's a lot of really intricate formatting issues when we start talking about things like link and lambda expressions that Visual Studio doesn't do a great job of helping you troubleshoot when there's a link statement error. However, Resharper does, and that's why I wanted you to install it. You may have remembered if you took my class last semester and watched some of those videos, you may remember that there were quite a few times that on my video Resharper was putting in squiggly lines or asking me to change something, and so I'm going to show you how to set up some of that now and how Resharper can help you in your coding. The first thing that I want to go over is how Resharper helps you with your overall format of the code and making you adhere to good programming standards. So when we declare a variable in C Sharp, and this is what we learned in the last semester, you use the type of that variable that you want to declare. So in this case, we're going to declare an integer. And then you give it a name. We'll just call this one myInt. And then you initialize the variable by giving it a value. So we're going to say 5. Already you can start to see that Resharper has inserted these 3 dots under integer. And it's not really an error message, but this is a formatting issue, according to Resharper. What it's saying is that if I hover over it, it says use implicitly typed local variable declaration. Basically what it's saying is that I am implicitly defining this variable as an integer, and I don't need to do that. It's thinking that I should be able to use the var keyword here and allow C# to determine what that variable is. You'll see I've got this little yellow light bulb here when I click anywhere in that integer declaration, and if I click the down arrow, it's going to show me Resharper suggestions for how I can make my code more readable and usable in the future. And it's saying use the keyword var instead of integer. So if I select that, it's going to automatically change that to the keyword var. So what this is doing is instead of implicitly saying that this variable is an integer, I'm allowing my initialization of the variable to set what that value should be, or what that type should be. So in this case, I'm setting the variable equal to an integer value. So it's declaring it as an integer, and it's doing that for me automatically. This, either way works. If I type integer in here, this is fine. I mean, this will compile, this will run. But as a coding standard, we can use that variable instead, and instead of implicitly implying what the variable is, we can allow C# to determine what that variable should be. In the case of the primitive types, where you're talking about integers and doubles and float values and strings, that's not a really big deal. But when you start to get into some of the more complex types, where you're talking about a list of some type of object or collections, the var variable or the var declaration can become extremely useful because you don't have to worry about trying to decide what the variable should be. I'm just going to use var and allow C# to figure out what the variable should be. There are going to be lots of times when you have Resharper installed in Visual Studio that you're going to start seeing those little yellow light bulbs come up. And I encourage you to look at what it's saying on those. Research why C# or why Resharper is giving you that little yellow light bulb. There's really a lot of things that will pop up on, not just this variable. So really look at that and really figure out why it's doing that. Another benefit to Resharper is it allows you to very, very quickly format certain blocks of text within your program. So, for example, something that's extremely repeatable that are going to use all the time, an if statement. If I type in the first two letters of the if statement, you'll see that in this text it comes up and gives me a option to allow that to automatically populate. This is Resharper that's doing that. It's coming in and it's automatically doing, my if statement. It puts my parentheses in there for me. It knows that there needs to be something in the middle here, so it's giving me this little spot where I can type in text. And if I do my int greater than 0, that's a valid if statement, and it automatically puts in my brackets for me correctly. Again, a if statement is a fairly simplistic use of that. Like if we look at something a little more complex, like a for statement, you can see that I've got several different options here in Resharper where it's going to put the code in for me. So like this for statement, if I just hit tab now, it goes in and it puts in a lot of what I already need. It puts in the integer because I'm going to use integer. It's going to assume that I want to use the value of I. Notice how it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little red box around that I. That's where if I type, information is going to go. So I'm just going to leave it as I, and I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to move me to the next spot where I have to put in text, and that's the upper limit of the for statement. So if I type in, a 6 there, you can kind of see the little red box around it better now. Just hit enter, and then it's going to say, okay, now we're going to move on to where you're actually typing the code, and I can do like a console dot write line and say I equals, and then use that I value that were in the for statement. And oops, didn't mean to hit enter there. And we have valid code then. Notice also, Resharper is also giving me another little warning here saying that, hey, you're using the integer value here. You could use the var instead. See, use var. So we can put that in there. And, yes, the code was put in by Resharper, and yes, it put in that statement. It's, automatically inserted that integer value for us, but hey, it's still saying that it's better code practice to use the var keyword instead of the int keyword. We can also customize this automatic text in here as well. If you go up into Resharper and you go to the Templates Explorer, this is going to open up, let me just dock this in the window here. This is going to open up all of the little automatic code inserts that Resharper has. We really want to concentrate on the C#. You'll notice it's got different languages in here. It's got VB.NET, XML, etc. But if we go into the C#, we can actually look at that for statement and see what it does. So if we look in here, you can see this is the text that it's automatically inserting. We're not going to go into too much detail on how to create these new templates. I encourage you to research that on the internet yourself. There are plenty of good examples of how to do this out there. But let's just say, for example, we want to go ahead and fix that problem with the for, where it was it was doing that. It was putting the integer value in instead of the var. Let's say we wanted to tell it put in the var. We can edit that template, and we can just change that text there. And so now instead of using the keyword integer, it's going to use that keyword of var for us. So we will save this, Did it save? There we go. Save. Close it. We'll go back to our program. And now, when we put in R4, you'll see it changed that to the variable or the var keyword instead of the integer value. If you find yourself repeating a lot of code, you have a lot of times where you're using, the same exact block of text over and over and over again, I would encourage you to look at creating your own template for it. It's fairly easy to go into the Template Explorer, create a new template, and create your own. We're not going to go over that, but if you, like I said, research it on Google, there are plenty of tutorials out there on how to do that. Okay, so I went ahead and opened up a little bit more complex program. This is a program that I wrote last year. You don't really need to know what's going on in all of this code here. I know it probably looks like gibberish to you because this is using LINQ and Lambda a lot, something that we'll get into later on in the semester. But I needed something that was a little bit more complex to show you the next step in, or next thing I wanted to go over in Resharper, and that's refactoring. As you get into more complex programs, there are going to come times when you want to rename something. If you remember, if we have an object or a method and we want to rename that method, we have to go in and we have to change it every place in the code where it's accessed. So if, for example, in this class here, I have this method called build preformat rule. I have that called all throughout the application. Actually, I think if I go to right click on this and go to view the call hierarchy, it's going to show you, you can see I have calls to that all throughout the application and calls from it. So you can see there's a lot of other code in this application that is affected by that one method. But let's say I really didn't like the name of it and I really wanted to change the name of it. Resharper can help us with that. It can go through and it can find all the instances of that method in the code, and it changes it for us. So if I right click on this and go to refactor, and then I want to say refactor this, it's going to give me some options on how I can refactor this. We're going to do the simplest one of the refactors. We're going to do a rename. And basically I'm going to say, let's rename this to build my preformat rule. So it's going to give us, that option, and we can click next, and boom, that has been renamed. If I go to some place where that is being called, it's in here someplace. Here it is. It's calling that rule factory build my preformat rule. It went through and changed it for us automatically. So that's a pretty powerful tool when you start getting into a lot of the more complex programs, and we are going to do some more complex programs this year. We're going to do some things where we're building on several different assignments, where you're creating a lot of different classes and accessing them in different ways throughout your program. So that may become useful. Real quickly here, I want to refactor that back because I really don't want to change the name of this class. And there we go, and that changed it back. The last thing that I wanted to show you is something, it's actually somewhat built into Visual Studio. Resharper adds some tools for us to help use it better. But that's creating to-do items. There's going to be a lot of times when you get into professional development that you're writing something, you need to write another piece of code, or you need to modify something, but you don't have time to do it right now. And it's really helpful to be able to create a to-do list right inside your code. You could, just take a sheet of paper, write it down yourself, to do, I want to make this change in the code later on. But The combination of Visual Studio and Resharper allows us to create to-do items directly in our code just by inserting a comment. In C Sharp, as you remember, inserting a comment is a simple matter of putting two slashes in. And then I'm just going to type the keyword to do colon. And you'll notice that it changes color. It changes to blue. That just means that, hey, we're adding something to the to-do list. And let's say I wanted to rewrite the return statement. And this is just adding a reminder to myself that at some point I want to come back here and rewrite this return object statement. If I go up into Resharper, one of the things under my tools is this, to-do items. It's going to open up a little window for me, and it's going to show me all of my to-do list that I have inside this program, everything in the program. You'll see that I've got quite a few in here still. I've got like 37 items in this one, and then I happen to know that this rulefactory.cs is in the merge engine. So if I open that and then look at Rule Factory, you'll see, boom, there's my to-do list. So I could come back at a later time, find all of my to-do lists, and go back and write that code. This is going to help you in your class. Like, for example, if you have something that, okay, I need to ask Jonathan about how to do this, or ask another classmate how to do this, write yourself a to-do, put it in there, and then when you come back to it, you'll have all of those organized for you. You can go through and find them and find exactly where in the code it was that you needed to do something. That's it for our Resharper tutorial. You'll notice I did not go over everything. There are a lot of different components to Resharper. We are going to go through some of them in the next few lessons as well, especially when we start getting into doing link to SQL and Lambda statements. I'll show you how Resharper can help you write those, and how you can use Resharper as an educational tool to figure out how to write your own link statements and Lambda statements. So this is going to be a great tool for us going forward. It's really nice that JetBrains is giving us a free year to use this, and I hope you find this tool valuable. Thanks, and have a good week.